Hi everybody, I'm hoping you can hear me now. Jason, can you hear me?
I can. I've just got mine back. My screen had frozen also. I've just.
Can you see the first slide?
I can, yeah. Have
Awesome.
You logged on as another presenter now, Amelia?
No, I'm me.
You're me, okay. I was getting mixed messages. So some people were saying that they could see and hear you, and other people were saying that nobody could hear either of us. So I couldn't work out when it was just me.
I think it was both of us. So good morning, everybody. Sorry, hopefully you can see that now. Can someone just quickly type in that yes, you can see and you can hear us now? I'm on the south coast today, and the weather's pretty horrendous this morning, and I think that's having something to do with my internet connection. So apologies. We'll obviously do our best to sort of get through this and answer all the questions that you may have. Have we had confirmation, Jason, that we're okay?
Yeah. Everybody, you don't need to tell us now. I think we've got plenty of confirmation that we're good to
Awesome.
go.
Fabulous, thank you. Okay, so let's get started. So yes, good morning everyone, and welcome to today's hospitality surgery, which is in the main a question and answer session for any unanswered questions for the hospitality and catering mitigation process. We do have rather a large number of people online today, so please let us know if you have any issues with viewing the slides or hearing us, and thanks for letting us know that you can hear us. So firstly, introductions. I'm Amelia Bodle, the Hospitality and Catering Technical Advisor, and my role is to support you across our portfolio and ensure you're comfortable delivering our qualifications. I'm joined today, as you already know, by the Industry Manager, Jason Ben, who will be supporting with the question and answer session today as well. You're going to say hi, Jason.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you.
As with all our webinars, you're all in listen-only mode. So should you wish to ask questions, can I please ask that you type in? But can I please ask that you put in the qualification code and the level you wish to ask the question about, just so that we make sure you're giving you the right information. So for example, 7100 level 1, and then fully type in your question before hitting send. If you'd emailed me this week, I will be including your questions along with the answers in today's session, so no need to type those in now. Everyone who is on the call today and who is registered will receive a copy of the slides as well as a recording of the webinar should it record. We did do one earlier this week and it did record, fortunately, so I'm hoping it will today. We will endeavour to answer all your questions, but if you need to, we may have to take some away to get them confirmed with our assessment team, and we'll let you know, and then we'll get back to you with answers next week. Next week, we'll also be updating the hospitality FAQ document with any questions from today's session. Okay, so the agenda for today is a quick update on the paperwork and processes required for claiming, then straight on to the answering of questions. So just a reminder that submission deadlines for both Calculate and Adapt do differ. For any learners whom you will be submitting calculated grades for, this must be done by the 26th of June. This will then allow us to then get results out for level 2 by the 19th of August and for level 3 by the 13th of August. For submission of any adaptation learners, this is now the 3rd of September, and results for adaptation will be submitted by yourself to Walled Garden in the usual manner, so will be available within the usual certification turnaround times. So firstly, the submission process for Calculate. To submit your estimated grades, you need to do two things. Firstly, complete a head of centre declaration. The declaration you can see on the right-hand side is only for calculated results, and only one is required per centre. You'll need to then submit it to the quality email address shown on the slide. You then submit your estimated grades using the Centre Assessment Grade Tool, which is found on the Walled Garden. Access to the declaration and the grade tool are on the VTQ Mitigation page, and if you scroll down just below the sector-specific mitigation content. The submission process for adaptation. The first document you need to complete is the Intention to Adapt assessment form. Only one needs completing per centre, and you list the names and qualification numbers of the qualifications where you're applying adaptations. This needs emailing to adaptation@cityandguilds.com by the 31st of July. This is a new process from my previous webinar and one I flagged in the email I sent around to everyone. The second document is the adaptation spreadsheet. This needs to hold details of all the learners whom have had assessments adapted. The header centre will need to sign it, and this can take place electronically. Completing one across all the hospitality qualifications you deliver will be sufficient, as this will need to be uploaded with your CA2 to the quality portal for the EQA to select their sample whenever your next sampling activity is arranged. The quality assurance EQA process is slightly different for Calculate and Adapt. For Calculate, we will use an internal quality assurance process using a variety of tools and statistical analysis. This will be undertaken by our City and Guilds assessment teams. So these qualifications will not undergo EQA this academic year. For qualifications where adaptations have been applied, these will continue to be quality assured by your EQAs. Just a reminder, if you don't have direct claim status, you will need a sampling activity prior to you being able to make any claims on the Walled Garden, which is no different to normal. This will need to take place before the 30th of September. If you do have direct claim status, you can go ahead and claim via the Walled Garden once you've completed all the adaptations in the usual manner. So we'll start looking at the questions which you've sent through this week. I haven't had lots, so I'm hoping that we've managed to answer many of them already with both the generic FAQs and the hospitality FAQs. So does the level 2 food safety now cover all the what you must do and what you must cover of Unit 203, or just the knowledge requirements? So this covers just the knowledge requirements. It is expected that at least one observation will still take place for Unit 203. So where we've always said with the MVQ that there has to be a minimum of one observation, it's still expected that that will take place. So the food safety will only be covering the knowledge part of that Unit 203. The next question, I read through the FAQ guide and noticed on question 22, the individual learner adaptation form is no longer required. So just double checking that this is the case. And yes, absolutely, we no longer need this document. However, if you have completed them, please do feel free to leave them with your assessment and IQA paperwork, as this may well support the EQAs undertaking their sample. Next question, 7091, the technical certificate. Do we have to submit a grade for each unit that the learner would sit on evolved test for, or just for the overall technical certificate? And the answer is yes, a grade needs submitting for each unit being claimed in the usual manner, although this is now done on the, because it's a calculated qualification, it's now done on the centre assessment grade tool. But yes, a grade per unit is required. For 7111, are there any allowances for a student with mental health issues that a case can be put forward as they have not completed 202? It is expected that Unit 202 is completed. You now have until the 30th of September to submit results for adapted assessments. If it is after that, you can still submit, but must use the normal assessment process. If units are incomplete and you still want to claim, a unit certification for all other units will be issued. And then a full certificate would be issued upon completion of Unit 202. And the next question, after confirmation of results and certificates are awarded, will the certificate state which grade, if any, had been mitigated? So no, the certificates will look exactly the same as before. So essentially, there will be absolutely no way for employers to tell that any mitigation has taken place. The next question, what should be done in instances where learners have completed a short answer question paper before lockdown, but didn't get a high enough percentage to gain a pass mark? Would it be sufficient to state that a professional judgment based on the individual would result in the decision that the candidate would have received a pass grade had they have had the opportunity to resit the paper? Now, so long as there is evidence to support this decision, and in the tutor's professional opinion, this evidence relates to the criteria of the short answer question and to the pass level required, then this is absolutely fine. So now let's take any further questions. Jason, do you want to sort of start, and then I'll pull up my question screen as well?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, a question from Tanya about the level 1 713103 adaptation or estimated. If it's estimated, have you got a grading criteria we can follow? And I'm almost certain the 7131 is for adaptation. In fact, it is adaptation. So yeah, that's that one. I'm just quickly looking through.
So I've got one here. So from Duncan, with the level 1 culinary skills 713811 being calculated, as we deliver the food safety unit 802 as adapted, how would this be claimed before the 26th of June? Would that need to be placed on the adaptation document? It's a great question, Duncan. So essentially, because the food safety unit is adapted, then you don't obviously claim it through the centre assessment grade tool, and you can do that after the 26th of June. So you would submit your calculated grades for 713811 through the calculated grade tool, and they would be then reviewed. And then once you've completed unit 202, and indeed if you've used, or 820, if you've used the adaptation approach, then yes, you would need to place it on the adaptation document. But if it was achieved previously through ordinary means, then that would be, you wouldn't need to do that. You can then go on to walled garden and obviously make the claim once that unit has been completed, because you're correct, that one is absolutely adapt. And what will happen is those two parts of the process will then enable the final overall certificate to be released. So if we consider that that perhaps doesn't happen until later on in the year, so you might have got your centre assessment grade results through for 713811 in August, but then you weren't actually submitting the results for food safety until sort of the end of August, then you'd end up initially with a unit credit certificate, and then once the food safety unit was completed, then the system would know that the whole rules of combination were now met, and it would then churn out the final certificate, which would tell you, that you'd got that level 1 in culinary skills.
Amelia, we've just got quite a few questions coming through about, there's a little bit of confusion over the 7111. Paul's asked, is this now calculated? Sorry, the question on the slides regarding 7111, you said that they have until September the 30th for adaptation grades. The 7111 is now calculated and should be done by the 26th of June. We seem to have provided a little bit of uncertainty with regards to the slides, which I'm just looking through. We've had quite a few about that now.
Okay, apologies for that then, everyone. Yes, you're absolutely correct. 7111 is calculate. So that does need to be put through the centre assessment grade tool by the 26th of June. In terms of if anyone's doing sort of the food safety, then that would be answered in the question I've just sort of answered for Duncan. There's been quite a few questions actually around how you go about then sort of calculating the final grade as well, and whether further levels for 7100 are actually calculated as well. So you're right, 7111 is calculate. Level 2 and level 3 are actually adapt, so they would be need to put through the sort of adaptation process.
I'm just going to go through now and just delete those questions because there's quite a few around that particular question. So I'm just going to go through and delete those to avoid a little bit of confusion, if I can. So I've got another one here about the 7100 level 2. Does unit 202 need to be completed if they had completed this in their level 1 qualification?
Yes, that's part of the mitigation approach. So it does sort of say with the 7100 level 1 that part of the ability to be able to do that does mean that unit 202, so the food safety, has to be completed. And exactly the same process as I just explained in Duncan's question for 7138. So you can still submit your centre assessment grades and then do the food safety unit afterwards, and then the certification will catch up. But you do need to do that.
So Tanya, we've got another question here from Tanya. I have other qualifications with VTCT and they are requesting 70% or more for each unit. Are 713103, 713209 and 7100 the same process? No, you just need to follow our guidance on this, Tanya. There will be differences with what we're doing as mitigation compared to VTCT, but that's because there's likely to be very different assessment methods within those qualifications.
Okay, and I've got one here from Claire, 7131 level 1. Just to check, please, the one observation per unit. Can the evidence for this be adapted to just include observation of practical skills in the realistic work environment and not a formal summative assessment? So, yes, essentially, Claire, you need to sort of, I think we've sort of laid out quite well now in the mitigation document, the requirements now for the observation. So there does need to be one observation per unit, and you sort of can look across the whole qualification to make sure that that's there. You would clearly need to be ensuring that you're confirming competency with 7131 because it's the MVQ and the a competency-based unit.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I've got a question here from James. You've said that if we don't have direct claim status, sampling will need to take place before the 30th of September. Will this take place remotely or in person? So at the moment, James, all the sampling is taking place remotely, and we'll keep you sort of up to date with when that changes essentially, but all of the EQAs are aware that it will just be remote sampling for the foreseeable future.
And Yannick's asked, with regards to MVQ qualifications, does the student have to complete any missing evidence by supplementary or written evidence? Can the assessor complete a witness testimony to cover all the missing evidence? All the guidance on what you can provide as evidence is available in the mitigation guidance, so please just follow that. And there's a range of different things that you could do, but it shouldn't be all covered through one means.
I've got a question here from David for 7132. Will all the what you must do and what you must cover still need to be observed for the unit 203 within that one observation? So David, when we sort of said that there had to be an observation per unit, then that is the case. So it doesn't all have to be covered, and you can still use alternative sources to cover the rest of the criteria. So in total, the criteria needs to be covered, and there does need to be one observation within the unit, but you can use alternative sources to cover what isn't within that one observation in unit 7132, if that's all you do have.
And again, Mitchell's asked a similar question around the 7250, the level 3 practical evidence. Where it isn't possible to attain, is a recorded competency-based question and answer sufficient? Again, you just need to follow the guidance on what you can provide with regards to your evidence to support that learner to achieve the qualification.
Okay. So Duncan's asked another question. As part of the level 2 professional cookery, so 7112, he's saying that the cookery unit, so 7107, appears to be sort of estimate. So does that need to be on the calculation declaration? So no, Duncan, the whole qualification, 7100 level 2 and level 3 is adapt. I appreciate that we've sort of given you the opportunity to sort of calculate the final grade for 717, but it still does fall under adapt. So no, it just purely needs to be put down as adapt. And Steve's asked a question for 7131 level 1. Can you please clarify whether or not we can ask learners to complete UPK questions remotely? So Stephen, yes, in essence, but you would need to verbally ask those questions. If you're using the City and Guilds multiple choice question papers, you would need to verbally ask the questions, and then you would need to document responses. But you can use alternative means to cover the knowledge requirements of each unit within the MVQ. And those are all listed in the mitigation guidance document. So, for example, they could, on their own, actually complete the knowledge statements and then, you know, sort of send that back to you. So that's an option. It can be inferred from the observations that have already taken place, where it's clear that knowledge was viewed within the observation as well. And there's some other sort of options there as well for you.
Sorry, Amelia, I've got a frozen screen again, so I'm struggling to bring up my questions.
No problems. I'm just checking here if we've got some more. Okay, so from Hugh, 7103 level 1, 2 and 3 food service. For professional discussions, are candidates allowed to use notes for the recorded discussions to prove competence for a practical unit? Absolutely, Hugh. Obviously, we are still, so at level 1, it is calculate. So just to confirm that. Level 2 and 3 are adapt. So if you are using professional discussions to cover the tasks that haven't been observed, then absolutely you can use, we wouldn't expect, learners to just sort of do that off the top of their heads. So they can use any notes available to them. Okay. So Joe asked about the process for covering Unit 202 food hygiene, but I've already answered that question, Joe, but thank you for your question. And Yannick has asked, do we have to fill in S forms as well as the new paperwork? Yannick, this may be something that's an internal college process. So from our perspective at City and Guilds, S forms are used to make claims where you wouldn't have direct claim status. But quite often what you sort of internal admin departments do is to ask you to complete those, because that supports them with inputting the units into walled garden when they do it, and whether it's a pass, merit, distinction, if it's a graded qualification. So we don't actually need sort of S forms completing at City and Guilds, but that may well be an internal sort of process that you're following there with your college. If indeed you do have, you don't have direct claim status and you're then allowed to make claims but via an S form, then we would ask you to do that, and the EQA would discuss that with you after the remote sampling activity.
So I've got access to a couple of questions, but again, my screen's frozen. Stuart's asked about the level of IQA that's expected before claiming for several qualifications, and also about the use of an internal board before claiming qualifications, certifications. Carry on your internal quality assurance as normal, Stuart. There is some guidance in our general mitigation guidance booklet as well, which will just sort of point you in the right direction. But with regards to quality assurance, just carry on as you are, or have done in the past.
Perfect. I've got a question from Mark. So for 7111, if Unit 202 isn't completed and the students are to continue to level 2, would they be able to complete in level 2? We do sort of want that unit completing, Mark, essentially. But obviously when things, and I know some centres have already gone back, and I've seen pictures on sort of Twitter, etc., of students and people sort of going back into colleges. So you can complete it in the normal manner, and then you wouldn't even have to sort of complete any adaptation paperwork. But yes, it does need completing. And a question from James, if they've already sat it at level 1, do they need to resit at level 2? And no, James, they don't. If they've already got it, then that's absolutely fine. You can RPL that across. A question from Jean, for NVQ qualifications, do all, I think, supplementary evidence questions need doing for missing evidence? Then we do need, Jean, all the criteria to be covered across the NVQ, because it's a competence-based qualification. So you will need to provide evidence of that being covered within the portfolio. So 100% of each unit still does need to be completed. But how you do that, you know, essentially there's, you know, sort of broader options there available for you. So, you know, you can look to the evidence that's already in the portfolio. If you've already got observations and perhaps they didn't pick up some knowledge that you now feel has been met, then you can sort of retrospectively sort of add that in. That's absolutely fine. So I would sort of have a good look at the evidence that you have got available to see whether you can sort of cover some further gaps.
Antonia has asked a question around UP questions. Do they need to be voice recorded, or can we tick them off? No, they do need to be covered. So you do need to carry on and complete the UPK questions.
So I think she was asking there whether they needed to be voice recorded. So no, they don't need to be voice recorded. You as the tutor, if you were asking the questions across whatever medium it was, even if it was on the telephone, then you could use the you can use the actual sort of sheet that you've got there, and you can sort of circle on it or annotate it or whatever. So you don't need to actually voice record the learners' responses.
And I think that answers some of the other questions. I've got some questions around UPKs. Can quizzes to record the answers for the questions be used instead of the UPK questions? And also the use of Moodle to put questions on, multiple choice quizzes, etc. Can they use this tool instead of calling students and ask students verbally the questions?
So if we're talking about the sort of the NVQ, so the underpinning knowledge questions, so the tests, etc. So as I said sort of before, the tests in essence don't have to be done. What does have to be done is evidence of the knowledge completed. So if you were to put knowledge statements, you know, and use those, then absolutely you could. But the one thing that you've got to ensure is that the responses are the learner's own, that no one else is doing that for them, and that sort of evidence is being provided. But what you can't do is to put the multiple choice, the actual test papers on Moodle or anywhere else essentially, because obviously, you know, people could be taking pictures of screens, downloading all sorts of things. But in essence, you don't have to use those to prove that the knowledge has been met. There are other mediums that you can do that. I've got a question from Mark about 7100 level 2 and 3. They are adapt. Level 2 and level 3, they are adapt. So the mitigation guide is absolutely correct. The latest version that's there is correct.
I've got a question from Yannick, which I'm just trying to clarify in my own mind. So with regards to my previous question on MVQs about witness testimonies, I didn't answer the question, just directed you to the handbook guidance. Didn't completely understand the guidance. So can you please answer the question more clearly? Does the witness testimony cover this or not if the underpinning knowledge questions have been answered as well? If you feel that you've got enough evidence to support that learner competency, then that would, to me, be sufficient evidence. It's about you gathering those ranges of evidence to support that learner's and your decision. I think I've got the right end of the stick there, Yannick, but you might want to contact me directly after the webinar and we can have a discussion on it.
I've got a question here from JJ. If students had completed a level 2 food safety certificate, which is usually counted as proxy, would this still be the case? And JJ, absolutely yes. I chose a nice easy one there.
Sorry, I'm just sending Yannick my details just to contact me.
Okay. I've got some quite complicated ones coming through that are quite sort of long-winded, so I will come back to them if I can, but it may be that I come back to you sort of directly because it's specific instances of individual learners and all sorts of sort of individual things. So Sharon said to me, if we're getting students completed, do we need to do mitigation, and she's listed some qualifications. So in the mitigation guidance for hospitality and catering, it does say exactly what each qualification is, Sharon. So I think you started by listing a level 3 7103, the level 3 there, so that's calculate. And then you've listed 7138, I think that's a level 1, so that's calculate. And then I think you've listed, so 710304 is adapt, 713810 is calculate, and then 713821, if that's the level 2, then that is adapt. But do please check that, you know, that guidance, because it is quite clear in the mitigation document which qualifications are adapt and which qualifications are calculate. I do appreciate with 7100 that because we gave you the opportunity not to have to complete all the B and C tests, that it did feel like that practical unit was slightly calculated, but the overall approach is absolutely adapt.
Paul's asked a question about direct claims. They've got direct claims, only need to calculate the 2C tests. Just confirm they still need to do IQA, but not EQA. That is absolutely correct where it's calculated. But you do still need to carry out that internal quality assurance.
And Wendy's asked for 713208, so level 2 MVQ. When completing the adaptation paperwork, do the logbooks need to be completed? So Wendy, yes, absolutely. You know, there's still an expectation that those logbooks will be completed and that units will be signed off, because we're not sort of saying that you don't have to complete the units. What we're saying is we're allowing adaptations for the units. So yes, the logbooks will still have to be completed.
I'm just trying to drill down again into that.
So Paul's asked a good question. So will qualifications be adapted in the future, as no one knows what's going to happen from September on hours allowed to attend in college and will have to be delivered with blended learning? And that's a really good point, Paul. And we're actually sort of delving into that in a little bit more detail over the next sort of couple of weeks. We're setting up some sort of sessions to speak to a number of centres, and some people have asked this question before, Paul. So what I will do actually is I will send you an invite to a focus group meeting if you can attend. So it's basically that we are sort of getting all that information back from a number of centres. We'll be able to sort of discuss you know, what your plans are, what you're allowed to do, how that's going to look and feel, and then we've got some suggestions on perhaps smaller qualifications that could be delivered. And then any sort of further suggestions that we might come up with, Jason and I are then going to take that back to our assessment team, because clearly at this point in time, you know, there have been adaptations made. And if there's anything that we can continue with in the future which would support you, then that's certainly something we can take back to our assessment team. So yes, so thank you for that. So that is in process, and in fact that would be something that any results from that, anything that comes forwards from that, then we will put on a surgery and sort of talk those through as well. So everyone will be, you know, will have the results and the findings, and you know, if there's anything that's going to happen sort of in the future. So thank you for that question.
Adrian's asked about level 2 food safety certificates, so Ofqual approved, CIH, RSPHH, etc. Have to be completed within the last 3 years and evidence in the portfolio photocopy. I believe that is correct. I think it does have to be within the last 3 years. Amelia, can you just confirm that? I'm sure it is, isn't it?
Yes, so our proxy rules haven't changed at all. You know, they're still exactly the same as they were. So yes, you know, if they were done previously and you would have previously used the proxies, then you can still absolutely use those. And and you know, clearly you're in a much better place, really.
Sharon, you just put a message on there saying it's got both question mark. I'm presuming you've asked another question on the back of the question. I'm just going to look for your other question. If not, you might wish to type more information if you haven't already. I'm just looking now for it.
I've got a question here from Kirsty, or a comment really. So Kirsty, no, the NVQs across all levels are ADAPT, and it does absolutely state that in the mitigation document. So 7131 is an MVQ, and that's ADAPT.
So Sharon's question, it was around mitigation. If we are getting students, so it keeps jumping as more question comes in. If we're getting students completed, do we need to put any mitigation or calculated in for a variety of qualifications? And then you've asked if that was for both, I believe. Do we need to put any mitigation or calculated in? So again, it's just about following that guidance for each of those individual qualifications.
Okay.
Got another one from Stuart. Can we just confirm that EQA will not take place on calculated quals, even if they have completed units prior? That's correct. There will be no EQA on calculated quals.
And Elaine has asked, so for 7111, if they completed all the units either before lockdown or via adaptation, do we only enter the calculated grade for the practical unit, or do we enter all the grades as calculated? Thank you. Elaine, so that they would all need to be entered as calculated because it is a calculated qualification now. So I appreciate that approach changed, but the sort of the calculated guidance now supersedes any previous guidance. So all of the units do need to be put in the grade calculation tool.
Duncan's asked us for the 7112, has to be partially estimated, cookery assessment 717. Would that qualification need to be on the CAG form too? The answer to that one is no, because that's an ADAPT. So no, it wouldn't.
And Jean's asked about signatures. So what happens if a learner can't sign work? Some of hers are shielding and can't get access to their signature. So Jean, absolutely, we obviously we appreciate that. I mean, clearly wherever you can, and if they do return to college for something else, then you know, do by all means you know, sort of get their signatures. If you can get email clarification of things that have been done, then that would be brilliant, or voice recordings, that would be excellent too. So do your absolute best, because we do need to continue to prove that evidence is authentic, and it, you know, it was undertaken by the learner wherever possible. I hope that helps. Louise has asked a question on 7108, so the level 3 technical certificate. Does a percentage of the qualification need to be completed before calculating? No, Louise, it doesn't. You can calculate, so there was no sort of percentage put in. We removed all percentages. It was confusing people far too much. But I mean, on the basis that you've said that the main qualification, the 7250, has been completed, then essentially you would be looking at the knowledge requirements of 7108, looking at what's been completed in 7250, and if you feel that therefore that the learner would have had they have sat the exams, achieved them, then you can quite happily put those calculated results through. And if for any reason you didn't feel that was the case, then obviously you can then support that with a question and answer session prior to putting the calculated results through.
Sharon's made a statement that 710304 says adapt and calculate. I believe it's adapt. Might just need to double check that one, but
I will double check the mitigation guidance, Sharon, absolutely. I'll make a note to sort of do that. But it's a level 3.
I'm almost certain it's on
LQ.
there as adapt. I'm just quickly looking now to check. I can't see anything. You might need to point me in the right direction where you've found that, Sharon. But we can pick that up afterwards. Thank you.
Okay. So David's asked a question about MVQ portfolios. When completing the learners' portfolios for work that is being carried out during lockdown, does the date still need to be annotated in the evidence block? And do we just put other as the method of assessment? So yes, please, continue to authenticate those MVQ logbooks, putting in dates when assessments have undertaken. In terms of assessment method, then put the assessment method that it was. I'm not sure what you sort of mean by sort of other, but you can sort of happily put in if it was a professional discussion or a learner statement, then you can sort of add that in. That's absolutely fine. So Claire's asked a question on NVQ, UPK questions. The issue with sharing screens, Claire, is that it could be that then those assessment methods aren't secure because they could be taken away. So that's why the sort of verbal scenario has been offered basically as an adaptation there. But as I said, you don't have to use those multiple choice questions. You can complete the knowledge by other sources. So Craig's asked a question for 7100 level 2 and 3 about assignments, sort of saying that they are usually completed at home. So do they need to be identified as adapted? Yes, please, Craig, if you put those on, because it is a different situation, obviously, now if they're sort of completing them as part of lockdown and at home, then it is something that we're wanting to sort of consider. So please, yes, do put those on the adaptation spreadsheet.
Elaine's asked that 7103 level 1, if students have completed the qualification and no calculated grades are required, can we claim as adapt, or do we still claim via the calculated routes? Amelia, some guidance on that one for me, if you don't mind.
Elaine. Sorry, I'm going to need to sort of read that one myself. So if students have completed the qualification and no calculated grades are required, can we claim as adapt, or do we still have to claim via the calculated route? There's definitely answer to this, I believe, in the generic FAQs, Elaine, because any of the sort of generic questions are in the FAQs, which is basically at the sort of bottom of the mitigation webpage. Yes, you can sort of have claimed normally if they'd finished prior in the sort of usual manner. But if they were still sort of working through, then you would need to claim via the calculation tool. So I think we're going to have to finish there. We've got to 11:30, and this is the sort of end of our session. There are still a few outstanding questions, and Jason and I will have a look through those and check as to whether they've already been answered by us, or whether we need to sort of get back to you individually, and as usual, if we do, then absolutely we will do that.
Thank you, Amelia.
Okay, so yep, so just to say thank you please for attending the session today. We will now be updating the hospitality FAQs, and we do plan to get that done next week. And we will, as I said, sort of check through and make sure that there's nothing further that's come out of here that can add into those FAQs or indeed get back to you individually. This is probably going to be the last of our mitigation surgeries, unless we feel that, you know, there's still a lot of questions that are unanswered, in which case then we will obviously sort of add another one. But we hope that you've now sort of got all the information that you require to carry out the process and get the learners completed. So we will let everyone know about any further catch-up surgeries that are going to be taking place. As I said, we are going to be doing some work around, you know, looking at, you know, assessments in the future, etc. So we will definitely put on an update about that, and we'll obviously continue to do our monthly newsletter to keep you up to date. So finally, I hope you have an absolutely lovely weekend. Please do stay safe, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia.
Thanks, Jason.
Bye.